So today I'm going to be talking to you about Annie Leibovitz and her time as a photographer. So a breakdown of what today's going to look like is we're going to start with a brief history of Annie Leibovitz, go into an overview of some of her work, and then I'm going to analyze and critique one of her more iconic photographs and one of my favorite photographs of hers, as well as show you my creation riffing off of this shot, and then follow that by a side-by-side comparison, comparing and critiquing the two different images, and then I'll go into a summary just of everything we've covered today. So, to start with her brief history, Annie Leibovitz was born in Waterbury, Connecticut on October 2nd, 1949. Her father was in the Air Force and her mother was a modern dance teacher. So, due to her father's job, she traveled quite a bit growing up, and that just exposed her to a lot of different cultures, and with her mom being a dance teacher, she just really had a lot of creative energy flowing throughout her family and her life growing up. So, after high school, she attended the San Francisco Art Institute, and she went there to study painting, not photography, because at the time, her passion was painting. She had done a little bit of photography, but not just a ton. So she went there to focus on painting. After spending a few years, though, at the Art Institute, she went on a trip that changed her life. So during college, she took a trip to Japan with her mom, and she bought a camera to take photos of the trip. And this is what changed her whole career. She fell in love with photography because of this trip. When she returned to the States, she began taking night classes. And what she said she fell in love with most was the immediacy of photography, because you could bring your art to life so quickly, as opposed to painting where it could take weeks and months to bring your creation to life. Photography, you could do it in the same day. So from there, her life really just chose a different path. And the next thing she went into was looking for work. So she was spending some time while she was in college in Israel. And during this time, she was dating a guy, and he was giving her copies of a magazine. And this particular magazine was Rolling Stone. So she reached out to the creator, Jan Winter, about being a photographer for them. So she sent him her portfolio, and he loved it. So he was hiring her while she was in college on a weekly basis for assignments, and she was paid $47 per assignment. So she did this for 2 years while she finished up school, and by the time she was 23 years old, she was named the chief photographer, which is quite a feat for anyone. And this job is really what set her career in motion. So while she was working at Rolling Stone, she also went on tour with the band The Rolling Stones. And this particular job was a little controversial because a lot of people had warned her not to go. It was an incredible opportunity, but the risk involved with going into that environment was high. And the risk I'm discussing is partying and drugs and the culture that goes with rock and roll. And she did succumb to falling into that culture, which led her to have a drug addiction to cocaine. She has since recovered and is clean now, but she does discuss that when you're in that lifestyle, it's very hard to avoid it. So she remained working, though, as the chief photographer at Rolling Stone for 10 years, and then left her job and became the chief photographer for Vanity Fair magazine. She's also done some major advertising work for campaigns such as Gap and American Express, and she also went on to win the Clio Award, which is the advertising world equivalent of an Academy Award. Her images at all of these different companies that she's worked for are all very different and tailored to the company she's shooting for, but you can also really get a feel for her, and you know that she took these photos based off just looking at them, because they do all have her personal touch to them. So looking over at some of her work, she is really known for just giving all of her images this lifelike aspect to them, but also almost taking you into a fantasy world at the same time, which is very difficult to do. She's also known from a technical perspective for giving lots of bold colors, and she really is not afraid to really use colors to her advantage, but also making it very moody and dramatic tone. I think that's one of the things I've noticed in all of her photos, just how dramatic they can be. These two particular photos are two of probably the most iconic photos of all time, especially the one on the left of John Lennon, for many reasons. One, the photo itself is incredible, but then when you're reminded of the fact that it was taken just a mere couple hours before John Lennon's murder, and it is the last photograph ever taken of the man. So she really has this way of wanting to show people's vulnerability and showing their raw side and how real people can be. And I think in these particular photos, and all of her photos, she makes celebrities, which are her main clients, very real. And she just, it's that vulnerability. And from a personal perspective, every time I look at her photos, it makes me almost not cringe, but just like feel whatever her subject's feeling, which is the goal of a lot of photographers. Now, this particular photo of Kim Kardashian, I really was just not connected with, but was in awe of. And I think it really tells a story from a critical perspective of how our world is changing, and showing that within the day and age of social media, that there's just always so much more going on behind the camera and behind the face. And I think Annie did a really incredible job of just really showing that story. So this is the image I am choosing to riff off of. It is a shot of Keira Knightley, and she is dressed as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. So part of why I love this shot is just she really, in typical fashion of her, she's not afraid of color. And she's all the greens and purple, and even her subject, while her subject isn't even fully facing you, her face is just so well lit. You can see her reaction and the startledness and surprise to her. Well, there's also, I just love that little black sliver in the middle, because I think it shows that there's this depth and this eeriness of you don't know what's back there. And I just really love everything she did with this. And I also feel she took a riff of almost her own off of the Dorothy character by changing the color of the dress to purple from that blue and white iconic dress of Dorothy, and just making it her own and telling her own story while keeping to the true aspect of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. So I went and riffed off this photo by really trying to just emulate the tones and the moods, with I choosing to use greens and a color very much contrasting to it. So I used a model, and my friend Colleen, I just wanted to show off her beauty and illuminate her face, as Annie does in a lot of photos of all of her subjects, are very well lit in the face, while also having shadows thrown in to really just add in some dramatics. So looking at the photos side by side, they are very different photos, as in I really wanted to focus on the beauty of Colleen, where I feel is Annie was really telling a story, and it showing her whole body and the dog and the shoes and the bow and everything to the environment, whereas I just wanted to focus on the detail of just the face of this girl, but taking the moods and combining them. So overall, Annie Leibovitz is an incredible photographer, and I really enjoyed getting to learn so much about her, and I hope you did too. So thank you.